Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. I bet you think, what the hell's he up to now? Sometimes I wonder myself. But you often hear me talking about sets of plants and some of the logic as to what plant goes in what set. The trouble is there's always crossovers there, and sometimes you get exceptions. So I've just got a random bunch of plants out. These are all fundamentally in the Oncidium alliance in some shape or form, and again there's exceptions. But as regards what we've actually got here, Nellie Isla's at the back there. There's a Masdevallia. Well, that's not an Oncidium. Not in any shape or form. There's my Miltoniopsis. There's a Miltonia itself, albeit a hybrid, on a mount, so different again. There's a Brassia here on a mount. There's a Tolumnia on a mount. And then in amongst the pots we've got this thing, which has got a made-up name that I've never heard of before. It's a Hamiltonara. Hamiltoniara? Something like that. Hamiltonara. That's got a nice spike coming. These were ones that were just near the front of the shelf, or ones I could get at. Not any other reason for pulling them out. Yeah. That's an Alisara. A pot full of algae. They're going to get dealt with soon. There's a Miltassia. Shelob Tolkien. That's one of my better plants, I must admit. And then this one over here is a Miltonidium, Peter Comp, that one. Two lovely new growths coming on that. And then round the back here, this sorry looking thing is called Oncidium Golden Rialto, which I nearly lost, but this is the one I took the spike off, because the plant just isn't strong enough to hack it. The latest new growth isn't even plump, and it does have some wrinkles on, so I didn't want to let that bloom. But when we look at sets here, you can see that's quite an assortment of plants. Right, well the first thing we all know is that Miltoniopsis do not like to get warm. Right, well let's put that to one side straight away. Right, at the moment that's in a set on its own, shall we say. They don't like incredibly high light. They look like more of a medium light. They don't like strong light. They're very, very sort of palish, delicate leaves. You can sort of tell almost by looking at the plant that that's not a strong light lover. But they like to stay cool, and they need good air movement. Now you sort of think, well, hang on, we got a Bougaria Nellie Isla. Well, from past experience and from watching other people's videos and listening to other people talking, Nellie Isla, although it's an Oncidium type intergeneric and there's a fair bit of Oncidium in it, it's an exception to the rule. You get that one warm, it's not going to like it. So you can go with the Miltoniopsis. So there we've got two that the Nellie Isla can put up with stronger light than the Miltoniopsis, but will do okay in the same light level. But the common denominator with those two is they don't like to get warm. They also like good air movement. Well, then we've got a Masdevallia there. They don't like strong light. They don't like to get warm. Well, you can go in that set then. So already you can see a set of three entirely different plants. Miltoniopsis, Masdevallia, and some sort of intergeneric thing based on Oncidium and some other stuff. Yeah, so there's a set of three. Now what else have we got here? Now this one is called Oncidium Golden Rialto. Well, it's not. It's because all of the odontoglossums in the main were moved to Oncidiums or other places. That originally was an odontoglossum. They do not like to get warm, they like good air movement, yeah? And they can do without strong light. Well, you can go in that set as well then. So although that says Oncidium, because I know the history of that plant and I've looked it up, it's fundamentally an odontoglossum. So we've now got a set of four. Right, what have we got left now? Right, we've got a Brassia and a Miltassia. Well, they've both, that one is a Brassia, and that one's got a fair bit of Brassia in it. Yeah, Shelob Tolkien. I'll do pop-ups where necessary, but you can just tell from the two types of blooms, the Brassia hybrid and the Miltassia, if you look at the two blooms alongside each other, you can see they have good similarities. Now, that's a silly name. We have to put up with these things. Miltassia serves no real purpose. We know that the assia bit on the end comes from the Brassia element of it, but what's the milt? Is that Miltonia or Miltoniopsis? There is a difference, so we need to know. So that's a daft name, because it doesn't tell you what's in the plant. Quite honestly, it's Miltonia, because I've done the work. Yeah. So right now, let's have a think. We've got a Miltonia over here. Yeah. Miltonia Queen Anne. Right, what do Miltonias like then? Well, Miltonias can put up with quite good light. They enjoy it. They don't mind heat. Yeah. So we've now got a separate category. I mean, you can take it as read that all orchids like good air movement, so that's a set in its own. It's called the grow room, where there is air movement. And it goes from a gentle movement of the air at night when it's cool to a gale force wind supplied by two huge circulating fans. And it varies depending on temperatures. Yeah. But if you keep your air moving good, when the temperatures start rising, you help keep your leaves cool. So it is quite important. But as I said, that's a set called the grow room. So we disregard that for now. So where did we get to? Come on, concentrate, Roger. We're looking at the Miltonia side of life. Okay, so we have an actual Miltonia and a Miltassia that is part Miltonia and part Brassia. And we have a Brassia. All three of those can take pretty good light. You know, I wouldn't recommend strong sun, especially through glass, but they like good light. Heading up towards the Cattleya stage and even into the Cattleya category, they'll take it. They'll also take the heat, providing they've got the humidity and the air movement. Yeah? So we could start by putting those three in a set. So that's the Shelob Tolkien. You can go back there out the way. The Brassia on the mount. And the Miltonia on the mount. Now I've got a set as far as their conditions are concerned, but I'm going to have to split that set. That's in a pot with bark. Its watering frequency is nothing like the watering frequency of these two, so I'm going to have to split those two off, because coming soon those will need watering every single day. They'll need a good soak every single day, because they will then dry by the end of that day, and then the next day they'll need it done again. Whereas that one, even at the peak of its growing season, and there's 3 or 4 new growths pushing out quite strong on this thing. It's a very actively growing plant, so it is using its water up, but because it's in a pot, it's going to take at least 3 or even 4 days before that starts to dry off. So I can't water it the same, even though I can keep it in the same condition. So a little subset there. Right, we're getting there. What else have we got? Tolumnia. They like good light. They like good air movement. They like good humidity. And irrespective of that, it's on a mount. So it's going to need watering every single day. Well, you can just go in that set then. We've now got 3 in that set. That leaves us with 3. Right, what have we got left here then? This is a Miltonidium. Well, that's some Oncidium, and then we've got the Milton bit on the front. Well, is that Miltoniopsis or Miltonia? Because there's a difference. We've already put the Miltoniopsis over there as a cooler grower, whereas the Miltonium, the Miltonias don't mind the heat. So that one's still sat there in a set on its own at the moment, the Miltassia. I'm getting too many milts in my mouth, I need more coffee. Okay, so Miltonidium, I know that that's not got Miltoniopsis in it. It's actually Miltonia, and some Oncidium, so it's a sort of intergeneric. You could, if it's only got 2 genera in it, strictly speaking, it's not an intergeneric. Intergeneric classification really means there's 3 or more. It can get complicated, but what you need to look for in those cases is try and find out the dominant feature within it. And then if you do that with Nelliela, you'll come up with the wrong answer, I'm afraid. That just is a funny one. For some reason, there's something in there that stops it liking getting warm. So anyway, so that one, although it's a Miltonidium, and that's a Miltassia, they're both in pots. They both need the same conditions and the same care. So we now got a set of 2. What have we got left then? We got this pot full of algae. That's an Alisara. Well, it's a made-up name. It's a true intergeneric. And oh, it's got new growth coming. Good. Along with that one that's a bit weak. Didn't have a very good root system, this one, when it was potted, but it's struggling but recovering, and hopefully it will push on when the better weather comes. Now, Alisara intergenerics can just basically be thought of as fundamentally Oncidiums mixed with other stuff, and unless the other stuff is a real cool grower, you can go with that lot. And if I'm not sure, it'll go with that lot anyway to see how it does. And if it seems to be struggling with the temperatures in the summer, I'll move it over with those and see if it does any better. But it's going to go there for now. That leaves us with this thing. Hamiltonara. Well, it's a mix match. It's a mixture of all sorts of things. But even if you couldn't find out what went into that plant, you've only got to take a look at it, haven't you? Really. What do the pseudobulbs look like? What do the leaves look like? They're a good colour green, yeah? They're quite big and strappy, but relative to things like Cattleyas, they're flimsy. So they have a thin structure to them. Well, anything that's got a thin structure like that, you get it too warm without the humidity, the leaves can't cope with it. So whatever's in that plant, it goes in that set until I find out otherwise. And bearing in mind that's how I've been looking after it, and it's put up a new growth and it's putting up what appears to be quite a good spike, I must have guessed right. So out of all those plants, we've got 3 sets. We've got those are the same as these as far as their conditions, their environment is concerned, but their watering is quite different. Daily, when the pot in the winter, when the pot's virtually dry, in the growing season, before it gets dry. These drink, yeah? So do these. Well, they'll get their water daily. They'll get their water before the pot dries out in the growing season, so they keep hydrated permanently. And then over here, we've got watering the same. The only difference is, that's a Masdevallia. That should not dry out. Yeah? The others can err on the dry side in the winter and even get dry, but not for any length of time. Literally a day at the most, and then get them watered again. But they won't be doing much in the winter time, none of these, so their watering would be lighter. So, just a little bit of fun really. And now I've got 3 types of care here. I've got watering, virtually the same, feeding, virtually the same, but temperature range is different. So I need to think about where these go. They can go in the coolest part of my grow room, which is down near the floor, in front of the little computer fans that run 24/7. That's as cool as I can get them. Yeah? Hot air rises basically. These can go where they get good light. They'll get the air movement because I keep the air moving in the grow room, and water accordingly. These, exactly the same conditions as these, except for the watering. So I've ended up with 3 sets. How many other sets do you think I've got out in the grow room? The answer is not many. I've got a few little exceptions lurking around. I mean, if you take the holy clay pots, the plants that are in there need good light, so they'd come into this category, yeah? But because they're in the holy clay pots, their watering frequency may well be different, because they're going to dry a lot quicker. So in the growing season, when I've got the temperatures, they need watering every other day. So not every day, but every other day. You see what I'm getting at? By working out your sets. See, now in this set, there are loads. In fact, the majority of my plants come into this set. Pretty good light, air movement, humidity, and water before they dry out. All my Latoria dendrobiums come into that category. My Phalaenopsis type dendrobiums. And during the growing season, virtually all of my dendrobiums come into that category. But then a lot of my dendrobiums are also mounted. So they're in that set as well, where during the growing season, every day. Yeah? So you see how the sets can help you look after your orchids. And if you can then place them together in their sets, you know what's coming next. Yeah? If you've got a big set like this one that's got plants that have been recently repotted, plants that are in bigger pots, plants that are in smaller pots, they'll dry at different rates, especially if they're growing at different rates. Yeah? The Oncidiums and a lot of the intergenerics do not have an annual cycle. They're awkward. They can mature their growths in sort of 9 or 10 months. So you can have growths pushing up at any time of year, including through the winter. And they may not be as strong in the winter in the UK because they don't get the light. Yeah? So, you know, just think about the sets and it'll make your workload easier because you know that today I need to look at this set. And every day I need to look at that set. And the cooler growing ones, well, they're not going to dry out as quick, are they? Because they're kept cooler. The ones that get far more heat will dry out quicker. So you can just get yourself sorted out into little sets of plants and deal with them accordingly. And as soon as you start getting, you don't need more than 3, 4, maybe 5 sets at the very most. And once you get your plants sorted out in your mind which set they come into, then fundamentally everything in that set gets treated the same. And that's just got to make life easier. It works for me, and it's worth having a think about. If you've got 6 plants on a windowsill, you may still have an exception tucked in away there. I mean, all my Phalaenopsis at the moment are in the house because they need the warmth. Well, I've got an exception. Where is it? Where did I put it? Over there. My Sidera japonica, or now called Phalaenopsis japonica, doesn't like it as warm as the others. It likes to be cooler. So it's not in a set on its own, but as Phalaenopsis go it is. It's my only species, and it's pushing out a nice spike as well at the moment. So you sort of need to think about exceptions. But, you know, just sort of coming round here, we've got this thing. Well, that's a good light and drinks well. So that's already in a set. Twinkles and Oncidium, we've already done that set. And most of the rest of that shelf, there's a few dendrobiums up the back there lurking. That one's a black hair type. Well, that works the same way as Latoria's. So it shouldn't dry out for any length of time and shouldn't get cold. Not real cold, I mean. There's a, whatever that thing is. That's a Kingianum hybrid of some sort. Now that should chill right down in the winter. Well, I can't go that cold. So it doesn't get as good a treatment as it should have. But it's Kiki's in a pot and it's not long for my world. That will be going to somebody else. Masdevallias, Restrepias, Miltoniopsis, all that sort of stuff clustered together so that they can all get treated the same. And then we've got stuff spread all over the place. Some of my Cattleyas are not in the best place for growing, but they're in the best place to look at. And that will be a short-lived period of time where it's losing its good light. And it's not putting on any new growth at the moment, so it's less important. And I want to look at the pretty blooms, so that's where it's living for now. Yeah, I mean, there's cotyledons in here. Most of those don't like to get too warm, so they all live down low. Get down there where it's cooler. Yeah, and stuff that doesn't mind the heat and likes the brighter light, get them up in the air. Yeah, so that's my logic of, you know, keeping things in sets to make my life easier. Most of the Latorias are clustered up in here, where they get a little bit of shade from other plants, so they're not, because at the moment I still haven't got that shade netting on, but they get good light, but they don't get the direct sun on them. They're shaded by other plants. And the plants that are shading them at this time of year don't mind the direct sun, because they don't get it for long. But soon that'll have to change. Up goes the shade netting. So just an idea, some thoughts about sets of plants based on care. Yeah, environment and care combined, and it'll make your workload easier. Well, hope that, I won't say enjoyable, but you know, and it's not intended to be instructional. I always say this is what I do. You don't have to copy me, but hopefully it'll put some thoughts out there and some ideas. You know, all my zygopetalums are over here together. And literally in the last few days, this one's decided to dump a leaf. Well, that's on the oldest bulb on the plant, and that's natural. So I'm not panicking because I've got a manky looking leaf. That's not a big deal. But they don't like the highlight. They don't like too much heat. Yeah? So they're sort of in a little place on their own. They get light in through the back of the grow room. Now that never gets any sun this time of year, but it's good light, but not strong light. Yeah? So little sets and make your life easier. Right. See you. Oh. This thing opened any better yet? This was pointed out to me, to the young lady who went and got it from the nursery for me and hand-picked it and then posted it over to me, that it should have been yellow. And I'd forgotten that when I filmed it. And yes, it flipping should have been yellow. Now I wonder if that was mistagged, or whether it's going to be one of those that fades. We shall see. But yeah, that was supposed to be a yellow Cattleya, not orange. I've already got quite a few orange ones, but nonetheless, even if it's not the colour I was expecting, it's still a nice colour. And hopefully next time it blooms, there'll be a lot more blooms per spike, because that's how it should be. But a nice colour nonetheless. Okay, see you next time. Happy growing and all that stuff.